We're going to talk today about stress, and we're actually going to discuss stress quite a bit. But one thing we're not going to do is talk about how we manage stress. We all know that getting enough exercise, eating properly, getting enough sleep are excellent ways to manage stress. So we're going to learn about the brain and how the brain works when it's under stress, particularly long-term stress. So we learned about the limbic system, the conscious mind, the neocortex or the subconscious mind, and the reptilian complex. And if we want to look at it one way, the limbic system is the thinker, the neocortex is the librarian, storing information through sights, sounds, smells, and emotions, and the reptilian complex is our chemical control room. Besides these three different types of programs that exist in the mind, we're going to look at another one that's called the rumination mind, and it is directly linked to our stress. But before we move forward, we should all be on the same page on the actual definition of stress that we're going to be talking about today. Stress is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. There are some natural chemical responses for stress: increased heart rate, sweating, increased breathing. Sometimes people get auditory exclusion, they'll lose their hearing. Sometimes people will get tunnel vision because the cornea of the eye actually flattens out. There's usually a strong, what they call mind-gut connection. So when we're under stress, our stomach feels odd or starts to churn. The body has enough adrenaline and epinephrine to last us for basically 24 hours worth of stress. And that is actually an amazing evolutionary trait, because in all reality, our stress would never be 24 hours in duration. Either we were able to hunt the elephant or the elephant killed us. The other interesting aspect is when we get a stress trigger, the body also creates a chemical called cortisol. And cortisol's job is to shut off non-mandatory to survival functions in the body. So it will shut off digestion because that's not mandatory to immediate survival. It'll shut off your immune system. It will shut off organs. Its role is basically to prep the body to be as efficient as possible for that immediate survival impact. Cortisol, however, is a simple chain of amino acids. Your body can produce as much of it as you demand. So unlike adrenaline and epinephrine, where we really have a 24-hour supply, cortisol is unlimited. Knowing that, we can now look at some of the effects of long-term stress, and you can easily put in effects of cortisol instead of long-term stress. Hair loss is a sign of long-term stress. Undiagnosed muscular pain. If there was no method of injury, but the person is suffering pain, that is due to elevated cortisol levels. Stomach ulcers, gastritis, irritable colon, decreased muscle, and decreased organ growth. This makes a lot of sense when you look at the drug cortisol, that it will be flowing through your body. Its job is to shut down digestion. And if you're not processing your food properly, then of course you're going to decrease your muscle growth and decrease your organ growth. Long-term stress or elevated cortisol levels are also linked to insomnia, irritability, anxiety, depression, decreased learning potential, decreased memory, and decreased intelligence. Now imagine if you're stuck in this loop. You go to work, your learning potential is lower, your memory is lower, and you're not functioning at your best intellectually. That will increase your work stress. Now you go home, you have insomnia, and you have depression and anxiety, which once again increases your stress level. So your cortisol level is continually getting higher and higher. Eczema, psoriasis, increased sensitivity to pain. This is also linked to long-term stress. Mouth ulcers and excessive dryness of the mouth is also linked to long-term stress. And of course, we all know cardiovascular disease, hypertension, increased heart rate, and increased blood pressure are all signs of long-term stress. But the fact that it can exuberate asthmatic conditions is also a huge concern about the effects of long-term stress or elevated cortisol levels on our body. Now, here is some shocking news for a lot of people. There is no such thing as long-term stress. Long-term stress does not exist, and we suffer the effects of long-term stress because of the rumination mind, or what I prefer to call the storytelling brain. And really, the storytelling brain is another program that we have evolved with that is designed to be your worst friend ever. And if you think about it, a lot of people will look at this and ask, well, why do we have a storytelling brain? It doesn't really sound like it serves a purpose. Why do we want something that looks for the worst case scenario? And it makes a lot of sense when you look at it on an evolutionary aspect. If we have two cavemen outside of this cave, one caveman will look at the other caveman and be, hey, you know what, let's go inside. That looks like it's dry, it's out of the weather, provides us some shelter, and hey, it looks like there's even water inside. The other caveman has the start of a rumination brain, or start of that program. And before he goes in, he thinks to himself, you know what, I should be cautious because maybe there's a bear in the cave. The caveman that had the start of the rumination brain, he lived longer because he started to look for threats in his environment. And of course, since he lived longer, he had more kids and passed on that program. Out of his children, the ones with the better storytelling brain lived longer and passed on a improved version of that program. And so on, until we are here today with this rumination program. The interesting thing about the rumination program, or the storytelling brain, is that humans are the only ruminators. Mice do not suffer from elevated cortisol levels worrying about having enough food stored for winter. They will simply eat till they're full and store their food and go to sleep and repeat this cycle over and over again. If you see the buck in this picture, one would think that he should have a rumination brain. He should be stressed out because come hunting season, there's going to be a lot of hunters that are out to kill him. Now imagine us as a species. If somebody had told us, hey, from October to December, there's going to be a more advanced species that's going to want to kill you. We would ruminate and plan and stress about it, but yet the buck doesn't do that. But what we have to do now is look at identifying what's the difference of real stress and false stress. Being attacked by the bear in this picture is definitely real stress. And guess what? You're going to perform magnificently. You're going to have a huge adrenaline and epinephrine dump. You're going to have this elevated cortisol in your system. You're going to function at 110% to survive this encounter. Getting mugged on the street is definitely real stress. And in this case, you will also function at a magnificent level. The fellow in this picture, is this real stress or is this false stress? Well, it's definitely real stress. Will he have a solution to his stress in a very short amount of time? Absolutely. Either that tranquilizer dart is going to work and the bear gets sedated, or he's going to be attacked by the bear. His body at that moment chemically is running at its most efficient process. Now let's look at false stress. And to touch into it, the media loves our rumination or our storytelling brain. We never hear about good news because the media knows that we don't want good news. We do not have a good news program. We have a rumination mind. And what we like to talk about is all the bad things. So that's really why news is bad news. It's because we have a program that's really active and gets really excited when we hear bad things. So let's look at some classic examples of false stress. 2012. If you can remember what 2012 was like, there was a general mass panic occurring on online forums, and it was really interesting to watch because of the momentum that this had built. But in all reality, what 2012 was a rare galactic alignment that occurred roughly every 13,000 years, where all the planets line up with the sun and the dark rift in the Milky Way galaxy. If we didn't have a storytelling brain, we should have looked at this event as, wow, that's pretty cool, I'm alive during a 1 in roughly 13,000 year event. But because of the storytelling brain, it took one person to say, hey, this event occurs in December at the same time that a very old calendar runs out. And in all reality, the Mayan calendar did not run out. It is a cyclical calendar. It just resets itself on that date. But because of our rumination mind, we instantly started to go down the path of what bad things are going to happen. And watching these online forum chat sites, there were some really well-educated, well-certified professionals on there stating all these doomsday scenarios. And at the end of the day, December 21st of 2012 was supposed to be the end of the world. The interesting aspect of that is that companies that sold prepping supplies couldn't keep up. The sale of freeze-dried food, batteries, long-term storage gasoline, blankets, flashlights, all these items simply could not be kept on the shelf, which is really interesting to think about because if it is truly the end of the world scenario, none of these items are going to help you. But, like I said, media and marketing love our storytelling brain. So then a lot of people then ask me, well, why should we control the storytelling brain? And the answer is really simple. So the picture on the left will show a calm mind. Now this calm mind just got some information from the outside world. Let's say your friend came up to you and said, hey, have you heard about 2012? It's linked to the Mayan calendar, and everybody's saying the world's going to end. That's when we get to this second scan picture. The brain is now processing information. The rumination mind now jumps in, and it starts going down the path of what can go wrong. Is there a bear in that cave? Do we need to worry? And that's where we get the third diagram in that picture of a very overreactive brain, and that's because the subconscious mind is now storing this information as sight, sound, smells, or emotions. So you're actually getting an emotional trigger out of an event that hasn't occurred yet. And with this emotional trigger, the reptilian complex kicks in and starts to deliver stress hormone drugs into your body, preparing yourself for this event, which it's perceiving as real. So the same chemical response starts to occur. You have the elevated cortisol level in your body. Unfortunately, your adrenal glands are fatigued, so you're not getting a good adrenaline epinephrine response, but your body can make as much cortisol as you want. Some people have told me that their storytelling brain is good because it allows them to predict the future. And I'm simply going to say that they're wrong. And I'm going to give you some basic numbers showing that the storytelling brain is rarely right. So the average person has 60,000 thoughts a day. Out of these 60,000 thoughts a day, it will ruminate 15,000 of those thoughts, and we're rarely right. We've all experienced it where we make plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and that event either does not happen, or if it does happen, it happens in such a way that none of our planning was good for it. And all that time planning was wasted, as well as causing that chemical response. And we know it. You know exactly what your stress hormone response is. Some people, they clench their teeth. A lot of people have a weird sensation in their stomach, that mind-gut connection. But we all know what our stress response feels like. And what we have to understand is that we cannot stay in that hypervigilant state without eventually getting sick. We have a chemical in our body that's designed to shut our immune system down and interfere with our digestion. Cortisol, long-term, is not a good chemical for the body. There's been a lot of studies saying that in North America, youth at the age of 25 have already experienced adrenal fatigue, which means that your adrenal glands have been used up, your adrenaline and epinephrine is really low, but also your cortisol levels are really high. And what was once saving our species is now killing us at an astronomical rate. The Mayo Clinic just did a study on cortisol, the stress hormone, and linked it to the top 5 killers of our species: cancer, diabetes, stroke, heart attack, obesity, all linked to elevated cortisol level. But now there's time for some good news. The good news is that we can heal our body naturally, and we can let our adrenal glands recover by simply taming the storytelling brain. So the storytelling brain is directly linked to our long-term stress. I doubt we will ever be able to control it, but we can tame it. And it's actually quite easy to learn the process on how to tame the storytelling brain to lower your cortisol levels. And the first thing you have to ask yourself, is the stress real? This guy in this picture, his stress is definitely real. And then you should focus on it, because you'll be able to manage and deal it, because it is real stress. If it's not real stress, you have to tell your storytelling brain, that part of your brain that now wants you to go down the path of making a plan for a stress that is not real, just tell it to stop. If you've heard something, a rumor or something on TV or something through the media that now starts to trigger a stress response in you, you have to ask yourself, do I know if this is 100% true? If you do not know 100% that what is stressing you out is real stress, you now need to say stop to your rumination mind. And the interesting part is when you first start to practice this, you will go down the path of making your plans, this old behavior, and then you will recognize it, and you will tell your rumination mind, stop it. And it will stop the planning. But interesting enough, because it's such a good program, you will notice right away a flash of it wanting to make another plan. Yes, but Did we think about this? And then you're going to have to say, that's not real. That's not happening right now. Stop it. What's interesting about the rumination mind is that when we deal with another person, the storytelling brain is never positive. That is why we are so bad at reading nonverbal communication, because the storytelling brain wants to do nothing besides plan for a negative event when you're interacting with people. So if somebody's body language tells you something, the way to manage the stress associated with it is to simply ask the person. If you perceive the fact that your boss is angry or upset with you, and you start feeling a stress response, take the moment to go to your boss and ask him, hey, is everything okay? Are you happy with my performance? It is that simple. Because if he is not happy with your performance and everything's not okay, that is real stress, and you're going to be able to manage it really, really well. But knowing how inaccurate that storytelling brain is, the majority of the time, your perception will be wrong. The other role about now recognizing that we have the storytelling brain is that we can manage other people's storytelling brain. We can manage the amount of cortisol stress release that another person has. So a prime example is at work, I would never walk into one of my employees' office, drop down a bunch of paperwork, look at them, say, you need to take care of this, and leave. Why would I never do that? That is because that is not the way I normally behave. If I am in a rush, I'll put the paperwork on their desk and say, hey, I need you to take care of this. I'm in a rush right now. I can't talk to you about it, but let's talk later. It's simply acknowledging what normal behavior is, because if I didn't do that and walked into my worker's office and dropped the paperwork down and said, you need to take care of this, and leave, their rumination, their storytelling brain would instantly start going down the path that I'm upset with them and that they are not in a good, safe place. As a supervisor, we have to be very aware at the power of the rumination mind in our coworkers. Just imagine that you're out in the field or you're working behind your desk and you get a call from your boss saying, hey, can you come in my office? I need to talk to you. That instantly will trigger our rumination mind. We've all been there. Your rumination mind will go to your subconscious mind and be like, hey, it's okay. We did a really good job last week. We knocked that project out of the park. The boss just wants to congratulate us. No, it will go down the path of worst case scenario. And by the time this person walked in your office to talk to you, they're already worried about losing their job and they got a cortisol release out of it. So to manage this, give them 3 more seconds of your time. Reduce the power of their storytelling brain. And it is as simple as this. Hey, can you come in my office? I need to talk to you about project Y, because I just need to clarify the scope of work as we're going ahead. 3 seconds. And all that did was take the power away from their storytelling brain. If you think that you can make plans, if you think that you can use your storytelling brain to start making plans, it is a vicious cycle to get into. And if you think you can actually make plans to win against this unknown stress, this false stress, you need to think again, because all you're doing is making shit up. You're making plans for something that does not exist, and your rumination mind will continually get you to go down the path of making plans, and the moment that you solve one problem, it will create another problem, because that's what it's doing. It's making shit up. And every time that you go down the path of making this plan, you're getting a cortisol release into your body, and you're slowly killing yourself. I really like this quote. Smooth seas do not make good sailors. We have all experienced rough seas. We've all gone through hard times. None of us were born in the silver spoon society and had everything given to us. We had to claw and grind and work to achieve the level of success we have now. But what you need to do is now give your body a break. Learn how to control your rumination mind. Learn how to tame that storytelling brain to allow your cortisol levels to lower, to aid in your recovery of your adrenal glands, so that when the oceans are rough and the stress is real, that your body is ready to handle it. Thank you for your time.